Welcome to Concerning the Spiritual in Art, a podcast exploring spirituality, consciousness, and the creative process. I'm your host, Martin Benson. Welcome back to the podcast, y'all. I have a really amazing episode today with visual artist Cedric Umoja. He is based in South Carolina, and we had just, mind-blowing conversation, not only about his work and the process that goes into his work, but a lot of these ideas related to our current cultural condition and sort of how we can, as artists, kind of unravel and the tensions that we have in our society, this sort of hyperpolarity. We went to a lot of places related not only to like healing and talking about visual alchemy, but also about plant medicine. The conversation really went to some very deep and powerful places and was super inspiring for me. An amazing person, equally amazing artist with a lot of wisdom to share. And I think y'all are going to really dig this episode. So I hope you all enjoy Cedric Umoja. All right, Cedric, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. Thanks for allowing me to be in this space
Yeah,
today.
man.
Yeah.
Super excited to share some space
hmm
with you, exchange some ideas and thoughts. And I really love your work, and I'm super grateful that I got turned on to the work that you're doing. And I was looking through your website some weeks ago, and you used the term to describe yourself as a visual alchemist, which personally I have my own understanding of what that means. I kind of get it, but I would love to hear in your words,
hmm
sort of like what you mean by being a visual alchemist and what that entails for you as an artist in this time period.
yeah. So for me, I'm an anime fan, and so for years, man, I followed the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood series, and it's a pretty long series. And when I got to the end of it, I started to look at our society that we're living in, and and realizing that there's a form of alchemy that's existing within this society that we're existing in and having to function with or in. And what I saw was just a form of exchange. So, for instance, you hear the saying, "You got to earn your keep,
Mm-hmm.
earn a living," and I really started to think about that saying, "Earn a living." I'm like, I'm already existing. Why do I have to earn something to exist when I'm existing already? Shouldn't I
Yeah.
be trying to find a way to continue to exist? And I don't think that's earning a living. So to me, like, and I think about, like, for instance, earning a lot of times can be a reward. So you, like, in school as a little kid, I did something that pleased my teacher, and so I earned the award, reward. I'm sorry, reward. So they're giving you a reward for this behavior or this action that's in their mind what they're asking for that can be positive, And so I kind of like looked at that, went back and looked at how we deal with everything and say, man, there's something wrong with earning a living. That whole saying of earning a living,
Mm-hmm.
which led me to see like this society that we're currently having to exist in as somewhat functioning a perverted form of alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you think about it, we're giving up. When somebody says, I worked hard for that, I gave up my blood, sweat, and tears. That's essentially the essence of a person. Think about it, right?
Wow.
Blood has the DNA and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sweat does too, and so does
Yeah.
tears, but they all have different components that make up a person. And it led me to think that it calls for us to give up ourselves in order to get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, man, I want to combat that somehow. And so as I was making work and painting and stuff like that, I realized that I too could perform some form of alchemy, and I could transform the materials I'm using. So in this case, talking about paint, transform the paint, transform that medium into something that could really conjure something more positive from people for themselves, not for me, but for themselves.
Wow.
A form of healing, maybe a form of acceptance, a form of awakening. You know, um, yeah, and
Wow.
that's kind of where it started from, and then it just kind of like continued. So now I consider my now I consider myself to be like in true hip hop fashion. I've given myself several aliases, you know. So I'm a
Hmm.
wizard because I feel like the brush is a wand.
Yes, it is. Oh,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah,
it
yeah.
totally is, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
like I'm a
dude.
wizard and you know a whole bunch of other aliases that kind of conjure a sense of magic to transform the material and the space and to give people an opportunity to deal with themselves. You know,
Wow.
yeah.
Dude, that's
Mhm.
so powerful the way that you're framing this right now. I mean, there's so many things I want to comment on about what you said in terms of even just your reflections on our culture, like how we
Yeah,
have these, how it's a perverted version of alchemy, which I find to be,
yeah,
wow, like boom, mind blowing, because
yeah.
there are these sort of like programs, these cultural programs that have been unconsciously
Mhm.
woven into our psyche that
Yeah,
really impact the way that we make decisions in this world, or even the way that we look at our own self-worth in relation to these bogus notions of what it means to be a success or what it means
mhm,
to thrive in this culture. And I
yeah,
think a lot of those things need to come to question because we are negating the, like what you're saying, just the purity of acceptance that should be applied to just being alive, like that there is
yeah,
no condition for that other than the reality, here you are, and for that
yeah,
notion you should be accepted as you are. But our culture doesn't do that. And
yeah,
this idea that earn your keep and earn your living, it puts us in a state of, you could call it like lack. And so
yeah.
everything is sort of telling us that we are missing something.
Mm,
And so
yeah,
there is this sort of wizardry happening with words, with advertising, with marketing, with like the cultural paradigm we're a part of, that I think, subverts the natural spirit that exists within us. And so I
mhm,
look at artists as like what you're describing yourself as a wizard, performing magic
yeah,
as a way to counteract this, a way to bring the spirit
yeah,
into the work that you do, and a way
mhm,
to, I don't know, conjure a new paradigm of spirituality that has, that accepts all beings, so to speak. So like I'm just like,
mhm,
my mind's just riffing on that
yeah,
because I'm like in such alignment with you, you know.
yeah.
And I think it's so special the way that you just worded that. I'm curious for you, like, what are some challenges that you have in like trying to evoke like a deep connective quality in the work that you do so that you can penetrate those barriers that society builds in people's minds? Like, how as an artist do you, or can we, like, dismantle these programs, like, and what are some challenges that you see that you have like doing that, because it's a big
Mm.
task, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. So like dismantling, I feel like it starts within, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like because funny enough, we become though we're not born into it, meaning that we don't innately have these qualities that the society is projecting upon individuals within it. We're indoctrinated into it, um, that we have the opportunity to um, disconnect ourselves because it's not innate. So we can find a way to disconnect ourselves from it or remove that part
Mm-hmm.
from us and interact with it how we choose without it being like the compass that governs our movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like yeah, so for me, I tend to in my work, I tend to bring uh, elements into the work. Now I'm bringing more and more elements into the work that really has the quality of deep interaction. Let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
So I have mirrors in my work,
Yeah.
and like it's funny enough. So you're saying how to combat that? I had a journalist that was writing about this 4-person exhibition I was a part of. Um, I was near the end of last year. Excuse me, and he was asking questions, and it kind of started with the mirrors. But he was like, I looked at the mirrors and I got a visceral reaction of
Mm.
myself, of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He was like,
Yeah.
I was looking at the work and then I looked down and caught a mirror and I saw myself in the work.
Wow.
So what I've been doing is I've been putting for like probably I'm trying to think how many years now. It's been about we're in almost 5 years. I've been experimenting with putting mirrors in my
Mm-hmm.
work. And what it's done is draw people into the work. It's
Yeah.
made them part of the work. It's made them have to interact with the work beyond just viewing it. Now they're
Mm.
viewing themselves in it, and now they're trying to find their place, not just in the work, but how does the work deal with them, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm interacting with it. So interacting with it in such a way now they're becoming a part of it. So they're becoming a part of the process too. And the process is to work with yourself as you're dealing with what you're dealing with that's on that surface. Yeah. And so what I do is do some writing and that's why, oh yeah. So another reason why I say, oh, I'm a wizard, because I came like as a child, a young person, or whatever I say child, but a young person, I was involved with uh, graph writing,
Mm-hmm.
but I was involved, but my part of the graph, what I enjoyed about graph writing really was the ability to put something up on a wall, but you could put anything up on a wall and you could it could interact with people. It could interact with the space, and I fell into more so of the writing side of it. And what I mean by that is I'm saying tagging, but where people just they come up with a hand style to write whatever they want to write,
Mm.
right? So not really the stuff you see on the trains, but I'm sorry, not yeah, not the stuff you see on the side of the trains, but the stuff you might see inside the trains.
Mm-hmm.
Where people have written their name or something. And I said to myself that I could see that as being very useful, right? Because I can continue to push and alter this idea of what a letter is. And then I can render it in such a way that it becomes a form of art, so much so that you don't see it as letters anymore. You see it as markings, you see it
Mm.
as marks or mark making, but I have something written on that surface that's at this point I've worked it to the point that you think is just abstracted lines or marks, and I've really written something there that you're
Yeah.
reading and don't know you're being exposed to. So I'm in a sense too. I'm sort of kind of using what they've done in the advertising from the '50s to
Yeah.
try to conjure energy and reactions out of people. So I'm using that same kind of form to do it in a positive manner. I would say, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Definitely like speaking to sort of the unconscious in these subtle
Mm-hmm.
ways, and I like how
Yeah.
you said like this sort of process of dismantling begins by looking within, and being able
Mm-hmm.
to recognize like how we're influenced by our surroundings, both for good and for bad, and art is just
Mm-hmm.
another tool of influence. But it comes down to the artist and their intentions and what they're doing that can drive the process of awakening or putting deeper into sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
unconsciousness, which you
Yeah.
see a lot of too, and I think for
Mm-hmm.
me as an artist, that's what's inspired me to do even this podcast, is because that's what I'm interested is in awakening, is in
Mm-hmm.
dismantling programs, is tapping into spirit and connecting with expanded consciousness. And I see so many other artists who are doing that. And there's so many different ways you can go about it, and so it sounds like your way, at
Yeah.
least how you began, is through graph writing and through thinking about
Mm-hmm.
sending messages in a more
Mm-hmm.
subliminal way through the artistry of your
Yeah.
mark. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, is that stuff still influencing the work you're doing today? Like, are you bringing, because I look at your paintings, I could definitely see that influence of the graffiti, like graph writing, tagging kind of
Uh-huh.
aesthetic, but it's also something different for me. Sometimes the lettering looks futuristic, otherworldly, alien,
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, but it's so consistent that it
Mhm.
feels like it's a real language. It's real,
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, like how you're evolving it or thinking about it, today as,
Um,
as you mature as an artist.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for feeling it. Yeah. And giving it those those qualities. Because yeah, it's right. You're right. I mean, I am like trying to continue to push uh this idea of how to communicate with people with the tools I have, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to expand those tools. And with that being said, I had the opportunity to go to Aramont School of Art and Crafts in Gatlinburg, and had a residency there, and spend time there, uh, not just working on what I would be doing, but being exposed and sharing conversations with artists of different paths. So for people who are working with glass and metal to wood, um, to fiber, um, printmaking, just clay. Like coming in and talking to folks and trying to understand their process and how they see the medium they're working with, and and then looking at the aspects of what they're doing, and seeing where that applies to what I do.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really been a I haven't really been a just a standalone painter in a long time. I've been working mixed media for man, I've been working mixed media for maybe 12 years or so,
Yeah.
but constantly trying to hone that so it can be sharper in the way that it uh it interacts with others. And so when people are engaging with it, there's no there's no guesswork about um, what they're experiencing. I would
Mm.
say, you know. So I've been pushing it, and so I'm adding other materials, is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like metals now, glass now,
Cool.
fibers, uh, materials that can be familiar to us, uh, but also to at the same time unfamiliar. So we have a way of interacting with it that makes us feel okay because there's some familiarity to it, but also something that drives us to want to understand it because there's something different about it that we haven't yet experienced.
Yeah.
And that's that's the space that I'm existing in, and making this, and so going there, I had the opportunity to experiment, and that's for me. That's what it was. It was about
Yeah.
experimentation, being able to experiment, and being able to be around makers in their field that could educate me about the materials and how they choose to use them, so I could get my own idea from being inspired by them. You know,
Wow.
yeah,
I love that, man. I mean, the interaction
yeah,
between artists is so important, and
yeah,
when you look at, the contemporary art landscape or some ways in which artists choose to navigate it, sometimes people bring this like competitiveness to it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
sort of like it's me and only me kind of thing. Like the ego
Hmm.
gets wrapped up in the work so deeply that they're negating the sense of community and collaboration and interaction. And to me, that in a
Yeah,
way will subvert your art forever if you have that mentality. But you see,
yeah,
and that sort of circles back to your first comment. Like that is sort of
yeah,
part of the cultural programming of like
yeah.
this all about me and I and my success and my
Mm-hmm.
family, and you know what I mean, which
Mm-hmm.
have relative truths and reality to them, but in the ultimate sense they're self-limiting and they're going to ultimately become a handicap for people to grow their consciousness, so to speak. So hearing you
Yeah,
speak about collaboration and learning and like having the
yeah,
mind of openness, like to me that's a
yeah,
sign of a true artist,
yeah,
because you are always looking for opportunities to expand yourself, through your interaction with others. And that's I mean, that's what we're here for in some sense, I think,
yeah. True.
is like to have this
Yeah.
expansive connective tissue that is revealed between all of life, and when you
Yeah.
engage and with it, like you become a part of a bigger process.
It's true. True.
So that's exciting to hear that, like,
Yeah.
this residency is fruitful for you, that you kind of
Yeah.
stepping into even different mediums and stuff. I love, what you were talking about earlier too with the mirrors, like bringing this quality into the reflective surfaces and stuff. But it's going to be exciting to see sort of where you go,
Yeah.
energetically with how these pieces might resonate when you start to introduce clay or fiber, or
Yeah.
metals into it, or even glass. I've always been so like
Yeah.
enamored with like stained glass windows
Oh
and
yeah.
seeing, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? The way they illuminate spaces. Like I would love to
Yeah.
learn about that
Yeah.
process because they're magnificent,
Yeah.
the way
They
they
are. They
capture
are.
light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you have
I
any big
mean,
projects you're working on that you envision that might come about from this residency? Like, did you come back from it just like ready to like make a bunch of new things, or how are you
yeah.
feeling coming down from it?
Coming back, I feel like I got a lot of work to do.
Mm.
Um, First of all, my wife, who's also an artist, you know, she was like, I showed my space. I showed my studio space. It's not large, but I showed it. I made a quick video, posted it on Instagram, and man, it was like I don't know. A lot of people viewed it, and I was like kind of blown away by it. I said, "Wow, people are interested in the artist's cramped, messy studio space." Because I was like, I need to clean it. So the first thing I got to do is clean my space
Yeah,
before I
man.
could do anything. And I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't really get a chance to start before the calendar year, Gregorian year ended. So I was like, when I get back, I gotta clean my space. That'd be the
Hmm.
first thing I do. Really, organize it for this coming year, um, and then from there, uh, setting myself up so I can work those projects. I can continue to further that experiment or the experimentation that I started at Aramont.
Yeah.
Um, I see it as a I see it as an opportunity though to like really explore. I'm also applying for a couple other residencies for this year, so I can just continue to tap into some different resources and work with spaces
Yeah.
and work within those spaces. Uh, so I took in 2023 somewhat off in a sense. Like I probably will be showing some work if I'm invited to group exhibitions, and there's some end of the last year type of opportunities that I was involved in before the year ended that kind of carry over into this year, partially, like partially. So like it will still look like I'm doing something or I'm putting something out there, but I'm not really. So I'm trying to focus on a 2024 solo exhibition
Nice.
so I can think about these ideas, work through these ideas, and really try to bring them to life in a way that I know they can be brought to life, so they can
Yeah.
be impactful and really deeply engaging. Yeah.
What are some like what are some like key ideas that you're working with right now in terms of like some concepts or things that are driving the work besides the materiality of it, like playing and experimenting with the material? Are there any other kind of like driving ideas or concepts that are being sort of woven into the experimentation with the materials?
Um, I would say yeah. The driving idea for me is like continue to explore, but push this idea of being connected to this this place that we're in. So
Hmm.
Earth. So Earth, for
Yeah.
instance, I'm using so Earth, but also the space that Earth resides within.
Mm.
Um, so you're always catching me using now at this point reflected materials. So
Yeah.
we talk about mirrors. Mirrors reflect, but they reflect, but they capture light,
Yes.
right? Or they can direct light. taking
Mm-hmm.
direct light. Um, I'm using textiles that have sequence in them, so they can pick up light, reflect light, um, and just so I'm using these materials to speak about this whole ideology of being connected,
Yeah.
being connected to to a greater sense. Because we talk about it, the individual, and it's true that we are individuals, but we're part of something much greater than that. Um, and I think that we limit ourselves when we disconnect from that. We limit our abilities to be uh, fuller in
Yeah.
ourselves when we don't connect in that way. So now I'm speaking more about connecting with ourselves and using
Yeah.
these materials to try to do that.
Wow. So
Yeah,
yeah,
to
you're
explore
thinking,
that idea.
so yeah, you're thinking
Sorry.
sort of about this bigger idea. Hey there.
Yeah, she didn't catch you.
It's all
Mark
good. Hey.
today.
Oh yeah, she can't hear me. That's right. It's in your
Yeah.
ear.
Can you close the door,
Um,
babe? Thank you.
um, man, no, I mean, this is so important, to be able to create work that speaks to the commonality of our earthly condition, the fact
Yeah.
that like we are, yes, embodied in different, you know, vessels, that make us feel separate from each other because, there's a boundary between where my skin is and the air is. And like everything outside of that is, not me. And everything
Mm-hmm.
inside of that is me. But
Mm-hmm.
I would totally question that notion because I think it's just a matter of perspective and consciousness, and we're living in a
Mm-hmm.
time where we are as a society grappling with identity a lot. It's a huge topic of
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And I think it's an important one to be able to recognize the differences between us and our histories, our races, our cultures, our religions, and being able to respect those things. But that being said, if we get hyper focused on the separative qualities and the distinctive qualities of us, we can lose sight of the inherent unity. And I think we need to be able in some way to hold both. And when there's an imbalance there, when we create further separation, we can create a sense of imbalance in our society where again it becomes about the individual versus the collective as opposed to the individual in alignment with the collective as like, what I'm saying, I'm getting
Mm-hmm. I
at.
know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
It's an interesting time because like we need to have these conversations about equity and identity and race and coming to grips with our violent and horrific past and being able to
Mm-hmm.
reconcile and find redemption and healing. But at the same time, I see that the hyper focus on this stuff can further entrench us within that
Mm-hmm.
consciousness of separation. Would you agree to that? Could you speak to that from your experience? Because it's something that I'm noticing and interested by.
Yeah. I agree with you that we're living in what's the best way to try to I'm trying to explain this. We're living in extreme times. That's probably the best way to put it. So either what I'm seeing is it's a lot of like far to like, and so when I say left or right, I'm not talking about an ideology of conservative or liberal. I'm just talking about one side versus another side,
Yeah.
essentially. So people aren't like being to me being down the center is where we should be because that's balance. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm talking about more so when I'm talking about left and right. I'm talking about balance.
Yes.
So I mean, I used to be a kung fu when I used to be. I'm a kung fu practitioner. I just used to practice it really heavily,
Yeah.
so much so it was the only thing I did for some time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got deep into the concepts and practices and ideology of it. And anytime that you are too far to one side, be it left or too far to the right, and not balanced, well, what happens is things get thrown off,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because anytime anything is not balanced, it's thrown off, it's not calibrated properly. So I look at this society right now is we're living in a society that's not balanced.
Yeah.
that's why we're having the situations that we're having. That's why we're having um, the we'll say the conflict that we're seeing, like physical conflict that we've been seeing, is because we haven't found a balance. But I don't think this society is one that seeks to be balanced, or it seeks balance.
Mm.
Um, so then it leaves it up to us. We're left with the responsibility of seeking balance for ourselves. And with that being the case, we're having to navigate now these difficult uh, questions. So, I mean, the question, who am I? What do I mean? Is this society? How does society sees me? How
Mm-hmm.
do I interact with it? Um, what are the benefits of being a part of it as a citizen? Um, you know, and really being honest with ourselves, because we can allow society to tell us what we are and who we are, or we can dive into ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
discover who we are, and let that emit from um, a place of um, practice, which the practice would be being oneself, because we're not told, and it's not something that's supported to be the self. Um, and so I see it as that. And I feel like if when we get to that space, when all of us, or majority of us, can get to that space, then these other issues, they'll still be here, but they'll be able to be accepted and worked in a way that doesn't have conflict to it, because
Mm-hmm.
people are saying society says, or you have to be this way. Well, we're all this way, so you should be this way too. That's society, though.
Yeah.
And if we were all dealing with ourselves, no one would ever say to another person they couldn't be themselves because society told them they should be something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's a matter of, you know, finding that balance, but also, we look at what society has done and what is provided to us, and also what it takes from us. Also, what it takes from us, and trying to navigate that.
Yeah,
You know,
man.
yeah,
It's so true. Like our culture is not helping itself in the way that we work,
yeah,
like we're just,
mm-hmm.
we're fighting against, like you're saying, like when you go too far to one extreme ideologically or in any way, even just physically, like in terms of
Mm-hmm.
balance, if I lean too far to my left, I'm falling out of this
Yeah,
chair, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and so it's woven in every component of life, this idea of balance and
Mm-hmm.
finding that dynamic center point. Like when I think of balance, I don't think of it as being something static, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it is a dynamic process that's in constant flux, but like the
Mm-hmm.
balancing point is something you're always moving in and out of, just in a very fast intervals. Like even standing
Mm-hmm.
upright, think about like the subtle muscle movements your body has to do to keep you standing. Like there's dynamic movement
It's
happening even
true.
though you're still,
It's true.
beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And so we need to find a way to like navigate that dynamism that has to be brought to the way that
Mm-hmm.
our society evolves, because I think
Yeah.
this group think, this tribalistic mentality, really for me seems to stem from fear,
Mm-hmm.
from the fear of what might happen if you are cut out of the fray, if you are out of the fold of the majority that you are
Mm-hmm.
aligned with or perceive. And
Mm-hmm.
fear is the ultimate driver of the imbalance in a lot of ways, and fear of other, fear of change, even fear of going within, you know what I mean? And confronting
Yeah.
our own shadow. Because
Yeah.
I feel like I look at our society as what we're moving through is like a really dark space, but it's in that dark space that we can actually awaken, because we can bring consciousness and bring light to the shadows of the collective. But it
Yeah.
also begins with each of us individually doing that work. And I
It's
look
true.
at the work of artists as like almost the work of, in some cases, depending on what artist we talk about, I would definitely align you with this idea, but being a form of a shaman,
Mm-hmm.
for society, and that like holding the center, you know what I mean? Holding that dynamic balancing point and
Mm.
being able to help guide people through the process of shadow work, you know, of
Yeah.
dealing with it. But
Um,
it's hard, man. It feels overwhelming. I
yeah.
don't know, you know, it feels
Yeah.
overwhelming, you know, like I know, like
Yeah.
for
It
me
does.
personally, like I'm trying to do this work on the daily. I'm trying to confront my own the own dark corners of my psyche so that I can liberate them into the light, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um but like it feels like a daunting task when you look at it collectively, but when I meet people like yourself, it gives me such hope because I feel like we're all doing our part in some way to help
Yeah.
unravel the tangled mess that is our current cultural situation, you know.
Yeah. 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 Um, man. Yeah. Thank you for the shaman shout out. I appreciate that.
I mean,
And
it's
yeah, and
just
it's
what I'm
true. I
thinking,
feel
you
that way.
know, like it's if we look at
Mm-hmm.
the idea of what a shaman is, not only in like the traditional indigenous sense as someone who is holding sacred space, but also who is a protector in that sacred space, who is
Mm-hmm.
there to create a sense of safety, for people to go and be vulnerable, you know, but
Yeah.
also they're, you know, wisdom holders, knowledge keepers. Um, they enact the sacred rituals that connect us to the more deeper levels of consciousness and reality. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can define a shaman, but in all those ways, I see that what you do and other artists like yourself, with the intention that's behind the work you're doing and the way that you're working, like you are in some sense, aligning with that archetype. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah.
think that's a powerful and beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you touched on that too, because funny enough, I'm laughing because I'm like, man, so probably 9 years ago, probably close to 9 years ago or 8 years ago, I came to this realization that when artists are really making art in that way, in the space that you're talking about, like once I got around artists who were really doing that, or saw it or experienced it, then I started to see that those artists, because not all artists are like that. I'm just going to be honest, not all artists are, because
Mm-hmm.
the intentions really,
Yep.
some people's are intentions. I know some artists, their intentions are driven by, for lack of better terms, capitalism. So it's
Mm-hmm.
driven by everything that we're talking about that pulls us away from ourselves, in a
Yeah,
sense. Now we do need resources and finances to take care of ourselves, but
for sure.
capitalism is a practice. It's not just a system that people work in and get something from, or it takes something from them. Capitalism is far more than that. It's an ideology, and it's a true practice, like other practices can be. And some artists fall into that, but a lot of artists who I encounter, they strike me as magical people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being in there with, for instance, I was like tripping out because no matter where I went, no matter what space I stepped into, I was always invited into that space. People were open. People were willing to talk about their process, willing to share with me, willing to ask me, what am I doing? Um, and willing to actually educate me on what they do and how I could benefit from things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I felt like, man, there's so many, like I'm around so many magical people. That's what I felt like. I'm like, man, I'm in a
Yeah.
room full of magical people right here. Like I imagine them having wands and and because I mean they make it work. Like the work they're
Yeah.
making, like it's just like wow, you really, and it's not just the aesthetics of it. It's when you talk to them and you understand the path they took to get there to make what they're making. That's magic in itself too,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also like a testimony to um, creativity and the magic that lies within creativity.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's something that's very sacred. And to think about it, and you were talking about, artists and, what we do, our position. and that's probably why like I was over the weekend. Well, I mean, yeah. Yesterday I said something to an artist, and I was like, we were talking about trying to think, we were talking about an artist's place and how we engage others who aren't artists per se. And I brought up this McCarthy quote, which was, I'm not going to be able to just to recite it verbatim, but he pretty much said, artists are dangerous people. And it's because we are able to walk in all walks of society,
Mm-hmm.
which is true.
Yeah.
We could not have nothing. We could physically, financially not have a thing to still be amongst a room of people of greater affluence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they would say they wouldn't, I would say probably in most cases, they wouldn't look down on us, which is strange because they would normally look down on the average person that didn't have money and they were in
Mm-hmm.
that space with them. But we have the ability to be in that space, not have money, and still be accepted by them. We
Yeah.
could then leave that space and go to a space where people are blue collar workers, and we could be accepted there too.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to be in and out of all walks of life, and because we do, to me, that kind of speaks towards shamanism
Mm-hmm.
because they serve everybody, right?
Yep.
They don't serve just one side of society. They serve everyone, right?
Yep.
And so that's
Mm.
what we're doing too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's powerful, man. Um, I think about, what's happening a lot in our culture in relation to like psychedelic compounds and like shamanistic culture, like becoming more, people becoming more aware of it because of the prevalence of people engaging in ceremony through like ayahuasca or San Pedro or even psilocybin. But then you're also seeing like the academic side and the research, which is all incredible and helpful for the mental health issues that we're having. But I see people are becoming more and more like sensitive and aware of like these other layers of reality and are willing to
yeah,
engage in these practices that for maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago even or
yeah,
15, 20, 30 years ago it would be like super taboo, but now
yeah,
like you're hearing them talk about it in the mainstream. And to me
yeah,
that's an exciting, interesting possibility for us. I think anything can be hijacked by big pharma, pharmaceuticals, and the
yeah. It can
military
be.
industrial complex and become like
Yeah,
controlled in some way. But at this stage, it's still like not, it still, I don't know, has a footing in its authenticity. Have you ever engaged any of those sort of traditional practices or been interested in those as a way to like deepen your own personal journey? Has that ever been a part
mhm.
of your path?
Yeah, most definitely. I feel like it's something that we all should do. To some, I think you have to decide to what degree it should be
Mhm.
done for yourself. But I think we all need to explore ourselves, and sometimes we need uh, we need a means to do that doesn't fall within the system.
Yeah.
To actually go back to some traditional ways of dealing with ourselves that has nothing to do with the FDA. You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure.
um, and there are medicines out there that are you know, in a lot of cases ancient. So like ayahuasca is ancient,
Hmm.
and what those sort of medicines do for. So like for me, I started my journey with ayahuasca, um, and I'm trying to think how many years ago that was. It might have been like 6 years ago.
Wow.
Um, yeah, about 6 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago was the first time. And that experience led me to understand myself. And I mean, here's the thing: if you got, depending on what you've been holding, some people, the doors on some people's trauma and life experiences are small, meaning that when that door gets kicked in or gets opened, it's not it's not tons of stuff having to flood out that they're having to deal with because they've probably been working with themselves in other means.
Yeah.
You know, then you have other folks, they have huge doors. I mean,
Yeah.
like 20 foot by 40 foot doors, double doors, you know, that they
Yeah.
open up and it's all flowing out. You know what I mean?
Oh man,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like for me, my door was sort of kind of in the middle. I had been working with myself, but I was still having to deal with understanding like relationships and my part in those relationships, but also too my relationship with the world, and meaning that what my identity is in the world, not how I see myself, but and not even how the world sees me, but what I was put here to do, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So it's like
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
identity is an identity that, that sometimes, unfortunately, some of us leave this earth physically and never get a chance to experience that or work within that space of who
Yeah.
they truly are.
Yeah.
Um, but I had the opportunity to really sit with the plant medicine, and I felt like we did it with a shaman that's Peruvian, did it with in a group, did it in dark, so it was traditionally done, um, and I sat for like 14 hours
Wow.
and dealt with a lot of revelations about myself, but then it led to the world. Like
Yeah.
like what I'm supposed to be doing in the world is what it led to too. So it said, it it worked through some heart issues I had,
Wow.
right? So I was dealing with heart issues, like, and I don't mean like a heart attack, but I'm saying the heart, like the heart chakra, dealing with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, dealing
Hmm.
with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like dealing with those issues and those that was pretty much the first thing that it dealt with,
Wow.
those issues. And I guess so it could clear a path to get to the truth about
Yeah.
myself, So once that was done, then it was all about who I am, what I should be doing, and how I should be doing it, not necessarily give me direction, but but more so of um, how I should be working in myself
Hmm.
to make this work a reality that can impact others.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a was an eye opening moment for me. It led me, which really led me to where I'm at now, as far as
Wow.
like how I see art and the art that I'm making and where I want to be in the art that I'm making.
Wow. It's
So
it's so
yeah.
powerful, like to be able to have a direct
Mm-hmm.
experience in these states of consciousness that we don't have words for, really. I mean, we can
Yeah.
find words to kind of describe it, but it is no replacement for the experience that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges in this sort of psychedelic renaissance that we might be seeing is the limiting factor in sort of describing what actually is going on, because it's so deep and it's so fundamental to like our innate being, just like we talked about in the very beginning of this conversation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
essence of who we are beyond our individual egos and our attachments and our illusions, like this pure space. But there's a lot of stuff we got to work through to get to it. A lot of things we got to clear out. And I think these medicines, these plant medicines, are our allies in helping us clear the way, like how you said, like kind of
Yeah.
dealing with the heart chakra and like the issues happening in there
Mm-hmm.
had to happen first to clear the pathway to higher states of revelation and insight.
Yeah.
Because everything has to move through the heart. It's the
It's
ultimate
true.
gate, that
It is.
everything has to pass through. There's no going around it. There's no shortcut. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
hardest one because it's dealing with our deep emotional self,
Yeah. Yeah.
and our capacity for love and compassion. But also on the shadow side, it's where we hold a lot of self-hate and
Mm-hmm.
issues with um negative emotion related to our own sense of self. And
Yeah.
so these are allies for us, and I see more and more people engaging in them. To me, that's exciting because it's
Yeah.
in one night, in 14 hours or less, you can do a lot of work with your own trauma. And I think we
Yeah.
all are traumatized in some way,
It's
no
true.
matter
It's
where
true.
you come from. what your background is. Of course, there are degrees
Mhm.
here, but I think fundamentally we all have some trauma we still need to deal with. Otherwise,
Oh
like,
yeah.
why are we here?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
have a lot of work to do, and I think these are allies for us. And as artists, like, it's just for me, what I've gotten from it is not only a reaffirming of the path of an artist, but also like a realigning of my consciousness toward what art is intended to be in terms of how it can inspire the spirit, and how
Hmm.
it can
Yeah.
help nurture seeds of awakening in people, even planting them as well. And to me, it's like that mission seems like one of the more worthy ones out there, as
Yeah.
opposed to the capitalist
Yeah.
mission of
Yeah.
monetary success and fame,
Hmm.
and so it's a special time. I think it's interesting. The more and more people I talk to, the more and more open they are to doing these things, or they reveal to
Yeah.
me they've done them. And I'm like, whoa, I would have never guessed,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's like, wow, it's good timing, plants,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It
and
is.
mushrooms and all that. Like, thank
Yeah.
you. Cause like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and for those who've never engaged in it, I think it's something you need to not take lightly, just to put
Yeah.
that out there for anyone listening. It's not
Yeah.
like something that should be taken as, I don't know, like it's not something you want to take frivolously. It's sacred and it has deep ancestral roots.
Yeah.
Humans have been using these plants as allies and medicines for since the dawn of time. I mean, we find evidence of them
Yeah.
all over the
Yeah.
world, every continent.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really fascinated with these histories, thinking about like alchemy, like think about like the
Yeah.
origins of like alchemy and like the hermetic sense, like back to those mystery schools in Egypt, and the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece,
Yeah.
these great philosophers and mystics were all partaking in these kinds of ceremonies, but it extends even deeper and further beyond that, and
Hmm.
so for me,
Yeah.
them coming back is, oh, good timing, because I think
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Right.
we need a jolt. We need something
Mm.
that's going to work a little faster. Um, and it's not for everybody, but it's for everybody in the same breath. It just depends,
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you,
I mean, yeah. I was gonna
go
say,
ahead.
yeah. I agree, and I think that like, yeah, you're speaking of the timing of it, and yeah, the timing of it is. I think we're in like the beginning of the beginnings of evolutionary moments
Hmm.
in humanity or in
Yeah.
human existence. Like these are defining moments for us as human beings. Like we're gonna like and really like this is the opportunity for us to take the right steps so we
Hmm.
can go in the right path. But I think these are defining moments. We're at the beginning of the defining moments of if we step the wrong way, like we'll be able to tell that we went in the wrong direction from the steps we are taking right now. 20 years from
Definitely.
now, we can tell. We'll be like, oh, we took that step, and
Hmm.
and but these are defining moments, and we're in this time of really discovery of everything that we have forgotten. And so, like for me, what the plant medicine also does is it allows us to interact with something, for lack of better terms, older than ancient, in a
Yeah.
sense, older than ancient. And think about
Primordial.
mushrooms. Yeah,
Yeah.
mushrooms, for instance, how old they really are. Mushrooms are
Yeah.
old, 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 and
Yeah.
and you think about, and this might sound, I mean, I think I'm in the right space, and it's not going to sound weird because I'm in the right space to talk about it, but I feel like they have a lot of knowledge to give us, right?
Definitely.
And it's because they're connected and they've contacted many walks of humanity before we came into existence. And I his I'm a Trekkie, so here's an example of like the mushrooms. And there's a new series. What is it? Is it called Voyager? Voyager might be the old one. I'm thinking about the new series. I can't think of. I'm removed right now. I haven't caught the new season, but it's no, it's Discovery. Yes, Discovery.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, Star Trek Discovery, and Star Trek Discovery, they have this system they had created that they've moved from it because they've gone so far in the future, but they like that's something. But anyways, this being in the future, they found a way to grow mushrooms, and then found out that those mushrooms actually had connection through all known space to them.
Wow.
So they could, so when they were trying to, instead of using a warp speed to go anywhere, they would just jump. So, but a human being, it would take a human being connecting with the mushrooms, like
Hmm.
literally. He would connect with the mushrooms, and then they showed the network of the
Wow.
mushrooms, and like they jumped, and when they jumped, they explained that science, and we just like the mushrooms are the oldest thing, like they were saying, they are the oldest thing in our space, and we found out that they have a neural network across all space that we know of, and so because they do, we're able to use that connection and align ourselves within within that moment to connect with that with those mushrooms in that larger connection, which allows us to jump in different
Wow.
spaces, right? So I was like, man, even they're talking about it, right? They're talking
Yes,
about how
it's
that
here,
connection, but yeah, and how old it is. Like
Yeah.
that connection was so old and so far and wide that they were able to move through space just
Wow.
based off of that alone. And it made me think about like the connection of it being here and and how old it really is and how it's come in contact or how how it's come in contact with many forms of life.
Hmm.
Animals have eaten mushrooms,
Oh
right?
yeah,
I
still
mean,
doing it.
same thing. Yeah, still doing it. So
Yeah.
so I mean, all walks of life that we know of at least somehow has had contact with the mushroom
Yeah.
and it's you know in its existence. I think like my interaction with it has been is full of wisdom. Like it's
Yeah.
like like a very old ancient being, pretty much like ayahuasca. I felt like
Yeah.
the grandmother, like a we all have had grandmothers, but a grandmother that's so grand of a mother
Yes.
that
Yes.
that you're just like, man, I don't even like. She doesn't make you feel like you can't look at her, but you just feel like I don't know if I'm worthy of looking at her. She's helped me deal with this stuff, and she knows the stuff I'm dealing with.
Oh,
And I
yes.
don't know if I'm worthy right now because I'm dealing with all this stuff, but she never made me feel like I couldn't look at her. She never made me feel like I couldn't,
Yeah.
like there wasn't, like I wasn't worthy.
Yeah.
But I think it's us dealing with ourselves and our worthiness. You know what I mean?
Definitely,
But
man.
yeah, but that connection. So like the ancientness of these medicines for me is what drives me because I think that we talk about the ayahuasca and they've been using it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the funny thing I think is everybody has the same experience, right? How is
Hmm.
that possible?
Right.
So you say to yourself, hold on, how is that possible? How I'm taking this and I feel like I'm dealing with an ancient woman. I talk to this person over here and they say, man, that old lady was da 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 to me. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you encountered an older or ancient,
Yes. That's the
Yeah,
spirit
everybody,
of the
yeah, right. So
ayahuasca. Hmm.
it's a lot of truth in that. So it's like
Yes.
it's not just something that it's not just something that's something that's spoke about and not experienced. The experience is deep, and
Yeah.
and that connection is even deeper and far more reaching because of it being what it is. Like you said, spirit. Like it's an
Yeah.
energy there that's working for your betterment. To be
Yes.
honest, I mean, if you allow it to, that's the other thing. You have to
Yeah.
allow it to, and not
Yeah.
fight that process.
Exactly. That's the biggest mistake anyone can make
Yeah.
in a psychedelic opening is resistance. It's like you got to surrender and fully accept whatever's coming, even if it's felt as scary or difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It always gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want, you know. It's
Yeah,
got that
it's so
wisdom, you know. It's got that wisdom to it. It does. And for anyone
yeah,
who's
it
never
does.
never like engaged in those practices, they you hear us talking and they're like, what are they talking about? That's crazy.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, it sounds crazy, but when you experience it, it's a different quality, and there's a different sense of knowing of the
Yeah.
wisdom that's there, the intelligence that is
Hmm.
inside of these compounds that is speaking and working for our benefit. It really is.
Hmm.
It's only when we resist it, which resistance in my mind is wrapped up in ego, right? In attachment. So when we
Yeah,
let our
that's
ego
true.
and attachments recoil and resist these kinds of experiences, that's where you have the quote unquote bad trips or the very difficult experiences. It's just resistance.
Hmm.
But I think you can take that knowledge and wisdom into our life. Like I always try to see for myself, like where I'm showing resistance in my everyday life. Like, why am I
Yeah,
resisting, you know, this or that or
yeah,
whatever? That not being said
yeah.
that, you know, you should always have very clear conscious boundaries, but there's a degree of
Hmm.
resistance that the ego wants to put up to
Hmm.
protect itself, you know.
Yeah.
And these compounds, they turn off the ego. Ultimately they destroy it,
Hmm.
they kill it, they
Yeah, yeah,
dismantle it. And so of course the ego wants to fight for dear life to hold on to what it is,
yeah.
these sort of patterns in the mind. But when you have an
Uh-huh.
experience of letting go of them, it shows you your potential for true compassion and love and connection and selflessness, you know. And to me, that's the kind of energy that's going to push our culture forward. That's going to allow us to find the balance on the sine wave of the yin yang, you know, that
Yeah,
line
yeah,
right between, you know.
yeah. That line
And
right
that's where we
between
got to
indeed.
skate on it. You know, we got to surf that
Yeah,
wave, you know, in between
yeah,
those
true.
extremes, you know. And I really appreciate you and your perspective, everything you've shared with me today and the work that you're doing. I'm
Yeah,
super excited to see what's going to come out of this
yeah,
residency and how, you know,
yeah,
2023 is going to be such a fruitful and exciting year for you creatively. I'm going to be, you know, following along and paying attention. And everybody listening out here, in the show notes, you'll have links to Cedric's Instagram, website, and anything else you want me to put on there when we release the episode. I'll be in touch with you, Cedric, to let me
yeah.
know. But
Okay.
I just want to
Yeah,
express my gratitude to you, and just excited to be able to connect with you in this format. And I look forward to connecting with you more. Hopefully, one day, maybe
yeah.
in the 3D space. You know.
And we have to. And likewise, I feel the same way, man. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this and being able to, share this opportunity with you and everybody else who may be listening.
Yeah, man.
So
Appreciate you, dude. We're on
thank
the
you.
same mission here, you know, and
Yeah, yeah,
working our best way. And it's all
yeah,
about coming together. And I'm excited that we could come together like this today. So thank you again,
yeah.
Cedric.
Thank
Everybody
you.
check out all the work that Cedric's doing. And yeah, I'll see you around soon, man. Take care. All right.
You
See
too.
you.
Peace.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Concerning the Spiritual and Art. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch and in tune with all the amazing offerings that we're going to be bringing to this channel. Thanks again for all your support. Super grateful. And yeah, excited to bring more content your way. Peace, y'all.